We are here at the legendary 17th hole at TPC Sawgrass, home of the Players Championship. Meet John and Pete and their special guests and enjoy 4 days of VIP access March 10th through the 13th. It's going to include 2 days of live trading with all the Market Rebellion analysts. You're going to get to meet John, Pete, and special guests. We do have limited seats. There's only 10 seats available. Sign up below. Make sure you get here. We want to see you at the Players Championship.
And here we go. Once again, the wild ride continues. You look at yesterday and it just kind of continues this playbook that we've had. We had a great accelerating market when we were looking over the Dow. The Dow accelerated up. It's up 300 points. And then suddenly, the last 45 minutes or so of the trading session, we started to see a huge push to the downside, actually finished right around that flat level for the Dow. Now, looking over at the NASDAQ, kind of a similar story. It was under pressure. The last 45 minutes or so, about 150 points to the downside, actually closed down about 80 points or so yesterday. So gives you a little bit of an idea. It really has become that market. We've seen this in the past, then we got away from it, and now we're seeing it once again, where it's that last 15 minutes, 30 minutes, maybe 45, maybe the final 2 hours, but we're seeing some of that huge movement that actually influencing each and every day. And that's exactly what we'd seen yesterday. Volatility just underneath that 23 level. We had a pretty decent range, 22, 25. We actually finished just below 23 yesterday on a little bit lighter volume. 37 million is nothing to sneeze at. But when you look at the year to date, we're averaging about 44 million per day. And you look at February, even so far, we're just barely into it, averaging about 40 million per day. So 37 million, a little bit off of some of the volumes that we have been seeing, a little bit below that average level. We did have Facebook yesterday leading with about 1.2 million contracts trading there once again, or Meta, however you want to call it. Either way, there has been pressure on that name for a while now, ever since we heard the earnings and the focus and all the spending on Meta. And that's really been the biggest criticism that they've had, is all the money that's going out and actually losing sight of what's right there in front of them, and losing out to some of the others in the competitive world that they are in this social media world that we all find ourselves in. So Crude's been kind of drifting down. We got all the way up towards that 93 level. We started that drift. We continue that drift. Finished the day yesterday, call it finishing the day, around a little bit 91 and a half. Call it somewhere close to that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to touch on that in just a second. But today we're actually losing ourselves off of that 90 level, and we'll see if that's going to continue. Now, that's something that Carter Worth was talking about earlier. As a matter of fact, last Friday, I was on the Fast Money show with him. He was talking about the price of oil, not energy stocks themselves, but the price of oil. He kind of felt like it was topping, at least in the shorter term. And so far, it looks like he's right. A little bit of a turn that we're seeing over the last couple of days, 93. And here we are now closer to those 89s. Communication services under pressure. They were down a little over 2% yesterday. Technology down a little bit more than 0.5%. You look at semiconductors, basically closed around flat. You look at a lot of different areas of the market and you see a lot of weakness. However, even with energy kind of pulling back a little bit, still, like I say, still 91.5 yesterday. You look at energy, that was up a little over 1% yesterday, 1.3%. And take a look at those financials, which finished in the green. So not everything under the same kind of pressure, obviously moving around, and a lot of people looking at different parts of the market for how they're going to take their lead. So Tyson Foods yesterday started off the day strong, finished the day strong, up about 12% yesterday. Cruise ships were on fire. They were all moving to the upside, close to about 8% across the board when you look at a lot of those various names. Throw in the airlines as well, 3 or 4% to the upside. We talked about that merger or takeover that we've got with Frontier and Spirit. Then you've got those beta energy names. They absolutely were responding very good yesterday when we were seeing that move to the upside. Schlumberger being one of those names, Baker Hughes being another one of those. We throw in a little bit with Boeing as well, and Chevron up a couple of percent. But there was a lot of weakness out there. Certainly when we have that big push to the downside, you look at Facebook, for instance, or Meta down about 5%. PayPal was down about 4%. You look at some of those Chinese names under a little bit of pressure. Google down about 3%. So even the mega caps feeling a little bit of a pain yesterday. Lucid, we talk about it almost each and every day. Seems like it's always going to the downside, down about 2% yesterday. Netflix had that big, nice bounce, and then it's been pulling back ever since. Throw in Microsoft, as I say, mega cap under pressure as well. So this wasn't just those high PE names. This was across the board when you're looking at the NASDAQ and some of those technology names for sure. So this morning we come in kind of calm, kind of quiet, up about 40 points on the Dow, down about 40 points on the NASDAQ. As we've kind of moved through this first hour of the day, we've watched the Dow start to move a little higher and a little higher and a little higher. Last I looked, up about 125 points. Still looking at the NASDAQ, kind of holding down about 45 points to the downside. I mentioned crude earlier. It was holding that 90 level, but when I last looked, it was right around that 89.50. So a little bit of a pullback, not huge, but we are definitely seeing an easing back off of that 93 level we hit just the other day. Now, on top of that, take a look over at the 10-year. We are fast approaching 2. We're at about 195. Very, very close to that 2 level. A lot of people concerned. Obviously, there are certain areas of the marketplace that are looking at that with a little bit of applause, and that would be the financials. The financials leading today, up about 0.5% early. First hour of trade, up about 1%. A nice, solid move from those financials to the upside. I look across the board at the volatility index, kind of a tight range, just like the market, a pretty tight range. So, of course, volatility should be in a tight range. It's right around that 23 level. That's where we closed yesterday. So we've had a little bit of movement, but not a whole lot. What stands out today, most likely for all of us, would be Peloton. And the reason I say that is not only do they have some of their numbers that were given out, we've had a lot of different news stories going on with Peloton now, going back to last Friday. It's up about 11%. What makes that interesting was early on, it was actually down. It was in negative territory. And then this big flip. A lot of different reasons for that. We'll probably be covering that today. I will be on the halftime report today, and we will be talking about a lot of different things. Had a nice little lift in certain other areas of the market. You look at some of the material space, that was getting a nice lift. Biotech, not so much. Biotech under some big pressure. Take a look at the XBI. That's one of those ETFs. There's a couple of them, but that one is another one of those where, wow, you take a look and you say, man, there's a little bit of pressure there. Energy started off down about 0.5%. Last I looked, we were down approaching almost a 2% level of getting hit to the downside. So we've gone through these ebbs and flows, some of these ups and downs, and certainly seeing a little bit of a down today. We had that up just yesterday. Consumer discretion kind of just hanging in there, and most of the other sectors, just like the market, kind of in a fairly tight range, somewhere between that up or down about 0.5%. So what's really, really moving the markets, especially when you're looking at the Dow today? Take a look at Amgen. Amgen having a great day, up about 6% or more. You look at Deere having another solid day as well, up about 3.5%. Throw in Micron, that's having a pretty good day. We mentioned the financials with this 10-year. Look at JP Morgan, look at Citi, look at Bank of America, across the board, seeing a nice move, close to a 3% move to the upside. You look at Dow, you look at DuPont. DuPont, how about that name? Up about 5% today. And a nice big bounce from these Chinese names. And oh, by the way, we might have one of those Chinese ETFs here in our unusual. But before we get to that, Simon Properties under a little bit of pressure as well. Pfizer definitely under pressure, down about 5% or so. A lot of focus on the COVID drugs, but that may be taking a little bit away from the rest of the core. So that could be the problems that we are seeing as they play out there, and some of the forecasts, some of the revenue miss, some of those different things. They did have a nice earnings number, however. Moderna down again. Seems like we say it every day. Lucid down again. Seems like we say it every day. GM under pressure. Wow. GM down about 5% last I looked. So definitely seeing a little pressure there. I got 2 unusuals, and then we're done. And I'll see you on the halftime report later on with Scott Wapner and the gang. So FXI, I mentioned the Chinese names. There you go. There's the Chinese ETF right there. 37, call it what? 37.40, something like that. We had a buyer of 10,000 of the February 39.5 calls. And those are going for about 21 cents. By the way, one print. This wasn't buy 10, buy 100, buy 1,000, buy the. This was one print, 10,000 buying this February 39.5 calls. That was pretty interesting to see that trade. So certainly that does stand out. Next, Macy's. Now Macy's is interesting because there's so many flaws, but some of those flaws actually do help push this stock sometimes to the upside. I'm talking about the short interest that they've got certainly is still very high. It's in the double digits. They also have a high level of debt. That's not so great. So there's a lot of the ups and downs. This is not an earnings play. This is a play just for this week. We are seeing about 2,300 of the February 11th, that's Friday, the February 11th expire, the 27 strike calls. So this is very, very short term. Those are going for about 34 cents up to about 48 cents. Will that stock make that kind of move? It's not a huge move. Stock, as I say, a little over 26.30, and they're buying the 27 strike call. So that's something that definitely stood out. But we've got a lot of unusuals there, and we've got the two or more that we'll be talking about in the halftime report, completely different from what we're seeing right now, because we're going to see where we are as we get a little bit closer to the noon hour. Folks, have a great day of trading. I'll see you tomorrow.